Peace and love, everybody. It's Medicine Man once again. Um, Today, I wanted to speak about uh, binding versus bonding. And should you bind a person, or should you bind a situation, or should you bind a particular circumstance, or should you bond with a particular person, or should you bond with a particular circumstance, an event in your life? Now, bindings. Bindings are one of those things, man, where we need to be very particular about who and what we bind ourselves to. It's very important in bindings that we acknowledge the fact that binding goes against the will of a person. So if you're in a relationship, for example, if you're in a relationship and you bind yourself to someone you did not bond with first, you're going to experience complications in that binding. I see a lot of people actually go out to bind people in relationships that they want and bind people in circumstances that they want, but not acknowledge the fact that everybody has free will. One of the things that I teach about bindings is that there has to be some type of natural love in place first. And so we're going to get into that. This is Hoodoo Heritage Month, October. Um, I absolutely support the Hoodoo Heritage Month. I don't know who started or how it started it, but it was brought to my attention about Hoodoo Heritage Month, and I think that that's an awesome, great idea to have a month dedicated to root working and authentic hoodoo and root work. Um, it's very important that we understand that we need to do things to perpetuate the culture, regardless of our circumstances as a people. We have to perpetuate our culture and advance our culture in many circumstances. So here we go. Now, when you're in a relationship that you haven't really bonded with the person and you choose to go out and bind that person. So you choose to say, well, you know what? I like this person so much. I am going to bind this person to me. Okay. Now, when you bind that person, you're actually going against the that person's free will. And so with that, it becomes I would say it becomes a problem in the end. Most times it does become a problem in the end, because bindings are locking on to a person spiritually. You're locking that person on to you spiritually. Now, you have to look at a person's destiny. You should. You should. From my perspective, you should. Look at a person's destiny. And you should look at your place within that person's destiny. So, and before you go bind someone, you should also look at the bonding processes that you guys have participated in order to come closer to one another. Now, when you bind somebody against their free will, it can go in all kinds and all types of directions. One of the things that I've noticed about bindings and from doing binding work is that when you bind yourself to somebody, you got to first establish a strong line of bonding. You see? And what I teach people is that in order to bind someone, there has to be some real natural love in the mix. You can't bind someone that don't absolutely love you. You can't bind someone that has lost love for you. Because in those circumstances, what happens is that that binding becomes more of an obsession because it's going against that person's free will. And if it's going against that person's free will, that person's spirit is going to rebel against that binding, because most times we don't even look and do a destiny reading to see where we fit in that person's destiny when we choose to go and bind them. So in that aspect, I would say that when we binding somebody, let's make sure that we bonded correctly with them. Let's make sure that. That's really, like, bonding is way more important than binding. Way more important. You know, when you bond with someone, the bonding is doing things together. Okay, you're going to the movies, you watching Netflix together, you cleaning the house together. It could be simple. You cleaning the house together, you cutting the yard together. You do all of these things together. All the activities that you do with your loved one is activities designed to bring you guys closer together. Because through those activities, you realize the similarities that you guys have. You see? And those similarities is what really makes the binding naturally happens. A lot of times, like I say, a lot of times, we be running out because we like a person, or we lusting on a person, or because there is some particular motive as to why we want to be with the person. We run out. I'm going to bind them to me. I ain't never letting them go. I'm going to bind them. And if you go, I'm going to destroy you. You know, that kind of mentality needs to cease, for the most part. And we need to become more understanding of what we're doing spiritually, because everybody is not to be binded. Some people have a particular rank in the spiritual realm where if you go and bind them, they have spirits that's going to rebel against that. And sometimes those rebellions manifest as arguments. Those rebellions manifest as altercations. Those rebellions manifest as all kinds of negativity. Stalking is one of them, and obsession. Woo. Man, let me tell y'all. Obsession and stalking is one of the pitfalls of a flawed binding. You bind someone that's really you haven't bonded with correctly. And when you do that, their spirits fight against it. And next thing you know, it's like, boom, war, chaos. And then you run back to your root work or your spiritualist, or if you're doing the work yourself, you're trying to understand, like, why is the work going in this direction? Why is there conflict? Well, the conflict arises because that person's spirit is not really having that. And so for that reason, there is chaos being created inside the relationship. There's chaos being created in the situation or circumstances in which you're binding. The bonding is when, like I said earlier, you spend time together, you do things together, you find the similarities between you and that person, and you use those similarities to build greater love for one another based on your similarities. Not the fact that you like this person for a particular status, or you into this person for an opportunity, or you're into this person because of sex, or you're into this person for any kind of reason, money or whatever. You know, the bonding process is very important. Very important. I'm telling you. Bonding is a natural form of binding that don't need no root work. You don't need root work to bond with somebody, but you need root work to bind somebody. You see? So we always would want to go through the natural course of bonding first, because from the bonding process, we learn to understand if this person is bonding with us as we make attempts to bond with them, the bonding process is successful. So therefore, there's no reason for binding. Now, binding has its place, but bonding is more superior to create a natural, magical, mystical effect and spiritual effect between the two people, because it's built off of similarities, commonalities. It's built off all of these things that you guys love, like to do together. But when you bind somebody without the bonding process, what happens is those similarities aren't there. The binding has nothing to latch on to in order to actually be effective. You see, a lot of people are binding people that they have no commonalities with. A lot of people are binding people that they have no similarities with. They're binding people to them knowing they're going in two different directions. One going this way, the other one going that way. Oh, I'm going to bind them. Bind them, go ahead. What's going to happen is, boop, the binding is going to naturally come loose because that particular binding goes against the person's destiny. And anything, no matter what you're doing, if it goes against a person's destiny, it's going to backfire. And for that reason, I like to teach that bonding is more important than binding, because if you bond with somebody correctly and healthy bonding, if you do it in a healthy way, you won't need to do no root work to bind that person. Most of the binding work that I've experienced and done for people and teach people to do for themselves is based on marriage. That's one of my criteria. Are you married to this person? How long has you been with this person? Because I want to see what level of bonding you guys have done before we even entertain binding you to that person. So let's say, for example, we got a married couple. They're married. Okay, they've been married for 5 years. They're looking for ways to enhance their marriage spiritually, to sync their destinies so that they can go together. Now, we would do a destiny reading and see what exactly each person's place is within their destiny. This can be done in various ways, from a reading or from astrological influences. Yeah, I'm back. Lost connection for a second. So we can use the situations of a person's destiny. We do a destiny reading, or we use astrological influences and other methods to determine where a person is at in your destiny before you bind them. So the example of the married couple, they've been married 5 years. They're looking for ways to enhance their marriage spiritually. We look at the destiny, see, okay, your wife is here in your destiny, your husband is here in your destiny. How can we bring them closer spiritually? Because if we tie their destinies together, and if the destinies naturally go together, that's perfect. But if we tie them together, because they both consent to it, then we bind them, because that brings them closer. That's just the ritual aspect. But even after doing the ritual, you still have to give a prescription, or a method, a remedy for bonding. A lot of people like to bind with no bonding. They just run and bind somebody they never bonded with, and it just turns into a bunch of chaos. So one of the things that we want to be aware of as we move forward is that binding people, you have to understand that people have certain particular ranks in the spiritual realm, okay? And so you can't go around binding people. If you bind somebody, that person has a guardian spirit, In many traditions, the guardian spirits are called different things. In Ifa, they talk about the Ori and stuff like that. They're your guardian. It protects you. You see, so if someone comes to try to bind you against your own free will, there's going to be rebellion. I've seen a lot of bindings turned into stalking. People stalking and obsessed with you because they done ran and got work on you to bind you to them so that they can keep control and dominate and all this other stuff, but not understanding the spiritual ranking of someone in the spiritual realm, their guardians, their ancestors, their spirits that walk with them naturally. You end up finding out that it turns into a chaotic situation. Okay? So you have to be very careful when you go bind someone. Now, the type of work that I would recommend, or the type of scenario that I would recommend a binding is for marriage couples, people who've been in a consistent relationship for at least a year or more. If you've been in a consistent relationship with somebody at least a year or more, then we're going to determine what have you been doing within that year's time to bond. Because if you've been doing the right things within that year's time to bond, then you really don't need a binding with that person. You've already binded yourself to them. Other ways of bindings and stuff like that is like sex is a binding and bonding experience. You see? So when a person gives themselves to you, that's bonding. They trust you enough to give themselves to you. That's bonding. You see? The actual act of sex is a ritual act that creates the binding. especially like we know about the menstrual cycle and having intercourse during the menstrual cycle. You know, it creates a binding. But the bonding comes first because you have to bond with a person in order to have sex anyway. You see? You have to bond with a person to have sex anyway. So when you bond with a person first and you bind them next, it becomes stronger. But you need both people's consent in order for it to really be effective in that relationship. But I'm not the kind of person, I don't judge how other people do their work. I'm just saying from my perspective, it's one of those things where if you bind somebody you ain't been bonding with, you're probably wasting your time or creating a situation that's going to require more time, energy, and attention to eliminate or to rework or to bring it back. A lot of things that we put rituals on really takes bonding. You know, it really takes a real good bonding. It sometimes takes communication. So sometimes we turn and resort to rituals when we should be resorting to bonding. Sometimes we resort to rituals when we really should be resorting into spending time with the person, finding out what are their likes, finding out what are their dislikes, finding out what are their triggers, finding out what moves and takes them in any direction, and being acceptance, having an acceptance of it. Because if you're in a long-lasting relationship, you know, the person you're with, you're going to have flaws and all of that there. They're going to have flaws, and you have to have a certain sense of loyalty, a certain sense of connection, a certain sense of wanting to bond for no other reason other than to be an effective contributor to that person's life. A lot of times people bind people for nefarious reasons. And we like to sugarcoat it under oh, I'm gonna do this ritual, I'm gonna make this work. But you can't make nothing work that doesn't naturally bond. You see? So if that woman left you emotionally long time ago and you come to do some binding work on them, it may get psychotic. Because she left you emotionally and mentally a long time ago, or he left you emotionally and mentally a long time ago. So there is nothing to bind to because there is no feelings there. When you bind, what you are binding is the feelings, the emotions, the experience of that person to you. So that they would consistently keep remembering, I had a great time these last 5 months with you. I had a great, awesome time these last 8 months with you. I had a great, awesome time this last year with you. But if a person can't really say that they had a great time with you or they had a great, awesome experience with you for that duration of time, then the binding work won't work because there is nothing to bind to. But if you had a great experience with the person, you can bind the experiences. You can bind the emotions because all of those things are ingredients that you use in your work to bring people together. So we have awesome experiences when we go to do the bindings on that person. What are we binding? We're binding the awesome experiences and continuously keeping those awesome experiences in their remembrance, in their memory, in their mind, in their hearts. And as long as those awesome experiences stay there, they will continue to seek more awesome experiences with you. But like I said, if there is nothing there at all, completely, totally, your bindings would turn into obsessions. They would turn into stalking because your binding isn't latching on to anything. And that person's spirit is reflecting. It's pushing it back because there is nothing there for that particular person. There's nothing there for that lady. There's nothing there for that dude. There's nothing there. So what is it latching on to? It's latching on to nothing. And that nothing that it latches on to that's there, it transforms into obsession and stalking. So you notice a lot of times that when people do binding work, you know, they be like, well, they ask questions like, is this person going to be obsessed with me? Well, the person will be, and I'm perplexed as to why a lot of people want others to be obsessed with them. People should be obsessed with their own success. People should be obsessed with their growth. And so when we do binding work to make someone obsessed with a human, that is considered dark work. Because the light work that naturally works for everybody on this planet is growth. Growth is light work. And so when you bind somebody to you, it goes against the natural order of that person's destiny, to where that person is not going to grow if you holding them to your position of life, because you want to be with them. And if that person don't grow, then that person's spirits is going to become irritated with you. And from there on and therefore, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be obsessions. It's going to be stalkings. It's going to be psychotic behavior. Those are the things that we should be aware of when we doing ritual work in relationships. If you want to bind somebody, go bind your manager. Go bind your job. Go bind your business. Go bind clients to come to your business. Go bind things that would help your growth. You see? Those are the things that you should bind. Bind principles. Bind realities. Bind those things that would help you guys grow. Now, there is a group binding that you can do together. You see? Man and a woman get together and they do a group binding for themselves. But what are you binding? People are obsessed with binding to each other. Bind yourself to success. As a couple, bind yourself to opening up businesses. Bind yourself to financial freedom and financial literacy as a couple. And I can guarantee you, as time goes by and you nurture and feed that binding energy, you're going to eventually wake up together one morning and say, you know what, baby? We need to open a business. We need to get our credit right. We need to open a business. We need to get this stuff together to set a future for our children. We need to have ETF funds for our kids and grandkids. So 10 years from now, you put $1,000 into an ETF fund. 10 years from now, 1,000 could be 40,000, 50,000, and you don't have to pay for college for your children. You see? Or when your child becomes 18, and you say, hey man, you know, everything good with you now, but I need you to go on out the house. I grown now, I'm ready to do some grown folk stuff. And you get the kids out the house, you can be able to say, hey, cash out your ETF fund, and then you can move on. Your child can then move on successfully, and we can kill that generational curse of putting our children out and they're unprepared for the world. Because this is what it's really about. Getting rid of the ancestral curses in our bloodlines. And one of the ancestral curses that flows vehemently through our bloodlines is financial illiteracy. Like, we don't know how to make money. We don't know how to build finances. We do not know how to build wealth as a group. As individuals, many of us do, but as a group, we don't. And what's important, like I said, in relationships, is you don't bind yourself to the person. The man and a woman should bind themselves to success. Bind themselves to opportunities. That would make binding more effective. Now, the bonding process, it happens all in between all of that. Because while you're working towards success and growth, financial literacy and things of that nature, you're bonding in the whole process. So that's important for us to know. I'm not going to speak on it too much. A lot of this information about binding versus bonding and the mechanics of it, I've analyzed and did research on, and I just come to the conclusion that when we bond with people, it's better than binding. Because bonding is a ritual itself. You have to actually have compassion, love, with no hidden agenda. Because you can't bond with people when you got a hidden agenda. It's impossible. It won't work. You have to have an authentic, official agenda to loving that person, being in that person's life, and then the bonding becomes real. You see? Let me look on there. Let me see what y'all talking about. All right. Let me see. Get rid of that. Boom. No, no. Now, bonding. Bonding is so important. A lot of us, we think that we should put a ritual on everything. Like I said earlier, we think we should put a ritual on everything. That's not necessary. Some of the greatest forms of magic happens naturally. Like these trees. These trees manifested from the dirt, from nothingness. You know, there's a science behind what's in the dirt and the seeds and things like that. But trees grow from, boom, they grow up. And they bond with other trees. In nature, trees bond with other trees. You know, you don't find trees trying to bind one another. No, they bond. And they all grow together. You see? Any place you find trees, you normally, when you find a group of trees, all of those trees, if you notice, are generally the same height. All of those trees in the area are generally the same width. Why? Because they're bonding. They're in sync with one another in their growth. You see? And that happens naturally. None of the trees say, you know what, man, I'm going to do some binding work on this oak tree next to me. The cherry oak saying, I'm going to do some binding work on the white oak tree, and I'm going to bind this white oak tree to me. You see what I'm saying? Hey, if that happens, the white oak tree grows this way, and the other tree grows that way. Because it's not necessary for the growth. Every act of magic that we do should be aimed at our growth and not tearing things apart that should naturally be together, or pulling things together that should naturally be apart. You see? So we need to understand too that when we bond with people, that bonding energy is essential. That bonding energy is real, serious. You know, a lot of great relationships, a lot of great situations, business relationships, not only like intimate, but business relationships, they're based off of bonding. If the bonding comes in, we did good business this first time. Okay. We did good business this time. All right. We did business again the third time. That's great. Then we got a rapport. They call it rapport. We got a rapport. Oh, I know for sure if I go to this company right here, that's good business. Because you got an experience, a bonded experience with that person or that business. So it becomes natural in your interaction and experience with that particular business or that particular person. So as I say, I'm the one to say that bonding is way superior to binding. Way superior. You know, in relationships in particular. Now, bindings, like I say, the binding part, like I said, the married couple scenario I mentioned, if you're married and you want to take your relationship to the next level, you can bind yourself to another person if you choose. Can't stop you from doing that. I'm just saying that it's more wiser, intelligent to, as a couple, to bind yourself to success and then work on your bonding in private. Work on your bonding. Get to know this person. It don't matter if you've been with a person for a year or two. You still need to learn that person even more. You still need to be even more compassionate. You still understand that there is more layers to this person than the layers I've been exposed to for the last 2-3 years. There's more layers. And you have to be compassionate about understanding a person's layer as each layer comes back, because there's nobody in the world that's going to simply just say, hey, this is me, bam, and give you everything at one time. You have to bond with a person. And as you continue to bond with them, they reveal more and reveal more and reveal more of themselves through time. Bonding works with time. Time is essential on this physical plane because this is how we calculate the distance from one event to the next. Time. And so if the right particular amount of time and bonding takes place, you won't need a binding because that is the binding. Time and bonding equals binding. Repeat that. Time and bonding equals natural binding. That's how you can ensure that your work has been done correctly and successfully. Like I said, we should stay away from binding people we have not bonded with. This is root work. This is hoodoo one-on-one. But I just wanted to deliver that message to you guys today in retrospect to Hoodoo Heritage Month. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great event, and I think it's a great culture. I think it's everything about it is great. And I think that as we learn more about ourselves, and we learn more about root working and learn more about our own interpersonal magic, because our interpersonal magic is very important. This interpersonal magic, when I say it's very important, it's very important. There's no script to your magic. You are magic. You are hoodoo. You are root work. You are conjure. Because everything that you do is a ritual. You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, ritual. Get up in the morning, wash your face, ritual. Because you do these things every morning. And most of us are set on schedules, so we do these things at a scheduled time. I know I need to be up at 7 o'clock every morning. If I need to be up at 7 o'clock every morning, I wash my face, take care of myself, my personal hygiene, and boom, I'm out my day. But I do that every day. So it is a ritual. See? So for the most part, I'm just telling y'all that and sharing my information for the Hoodoo Heritage Month. And peace, this is Medicine Man. In fact, I'm going to have some classes coming up soon. Email me at medicinemale21@gmail.com because I will have a class coming up next week, Sunday. Next week, Sunday, I'm having a hoodoo class. And my hoodoo class is going to be on root work, hoodoo, understanding the ancestral aspect of it, spirit communication, and thereon and so forth. So y'all guys stay posted. I love you guys. Y'all take care. Peace. This is Medicine Man. We out.